and hopefully there are a couple of snippets there for you. I like talking to a PowerPoint, so just to make sure we're at the right place at the right time, I'll make sure Mandy's got a copy of this as well. So you might want to go back and refer to some of the information in it. So all of you now, give me the big jazz hands if you can see some brilliant children up there and we're all at the right place. So I've also got my chat window up. Now, if you do chat windows on Zoom, you can ask questions, you can challenge things, because I also want you to answer a few questions. So that might mean turning on your microphone and giving a response. So the first question I want to ask you is, do you know who said this? Who made this statement? Now, it's not Christopher Pyne when he was the Minister for Education. It wasn't Eddie Maguire, or it wasn't Dan Andrews or our Minister James Merlino. Any guesses about who might have said this about children, how they're always consuming our time and talking and they don't respect us anymore? Don't be afraid to stand up and type something into that chat window. Now I know Mandy's got her microphone on. Mandy, who do you think said this?
Um, Socrates?
Yes, Socrates. So we've been talking about the same issues with children, 500 years before Christ. So your issues around a child who's not being respectful, you've got an adolescent who's dismissing and treating you disdainfully, it's all a really good sign that you're being a very normal parent doing a brilliant job. So give me a thumbs up if you would rather that your children had persistence or a special talent. Thumbs up for you'd rather that they had persistence, or thumbs down for no one want them to have a special talent. Okay. Thanks, Leah, for giving me the thumbs up. And this is a tough one because I often give the answers at the end of the session about if you just inherited 100,000, how would you spend it on your children? And I won't ask you to put anything in the chat window or turn your microphone on. But some of the common answers are a big overseas trip when we can avoid these lockdowns, buying an endowment for university fees later on, and I'm not going to disclose my answer to this question, but just think about that one for a bit. And give me the thumbs up if you think this statement is true. Yeah. And especially when COVID times, it's okay that you've lost your patience. You've really got frustrated with your kids. You've gone red zone or you've gone nuclear now and then and just had a huge outburst. It's okay because the element of restorative practices is you know how to meet with your kids later on and fix it up, to apologise, to explain how we can't manage our emotions in these stressful times. And you show them how to craft an appropriate apology and to fix up those tensions in relationships when things go wrong. So if you had a chance to ask your children what worries them about the world now or in the future or in the past, what do you think your children might say about what worries them? Is it, will COVID affect the NBN? Will we have better Wi-Fi? Will we have Christmas? Will we be able to have the new Xbox? And what's interesting about kids is if we really trust them and give them a voice, they'll talk about things that are very common for children. They're really worried about you. They're worried about you and your relationship. They're worried about your job, your business. They're worried if they cause the COVID thing, if they cause the anxiety and stress they might be picking up around the family. They're worried about fitting in and body image and dysmorphia and coping with stress. And, in our schools in Victoria, we've got over 25% of our children with diagnosable anxiety, and that was before COVID. So and you've heard that we can't provide enough mental health supports for adults and children in our community. But the central thing for you is Bonio Primary School, that you've got that hub, that central place, that you've got the experts there, your classroom teachers, all the support staff, that are pretty good with mental health and do not feel embarrassed about reaching out. When it gets too much for you with COVID, reach out to Mandy or the classroom teacher or someone. But you don't have to mask this stuff because we are all finding this incredibly stressful. And for kids to know that the family home is a safe place and the school's a safe place and they can get some answers to some of those big questions is really important. Now, if we were in the same room together, which is lovely when we do run those workshops, it's a really lovely question to share with other parents about what worries you the most about your children. Because your worries and concerns aren't different than any other parent that's in this webinar tonight. We share the same DNA around our kids. Now, we have all these surveys, etc., going around, and if your concerns are in that list, that shows you just a normal, caring, loving parent. It's okay. And this is a spontaneous list. So if we were talking tonight about cyber safety, then the rankings would change a bit. However, one of the interesting things is, as parents, we love our kids. We want to wrap them in cotton wool. We are all concerned about safety for our kids, about online predators, about safety in the park. But the levels of crime are about what they were in 1975. Now, that's nearly 50 years ago. However, what's really changed for us and alarms us is the media reporting this. 1975 in my hometown of Ballarat, the local courier reported factual information. There was no fake news. There was no trying to sell copy by having the best story. Nowadays when you read the media, the byline hardly matches the story. And we've really got to filter the media to us and to our children during COVID. There's far too much media out there that is increasing kids' anxiety and their levels of worry and stress. So look at the evidence and research. Be selective about the news you listen to. Contact the school. Use them as a great support. And while we're talking about this great school, turn on your microphone if you feel comfortable enough, or type in the chat window, what qualities and attributes would you like your children to have when they leave Bonio? So when they're leaving in grade 6 to go on the next big journey and chapter, what qualities and attributes would you like your children to have? So if you're courageous enough to flick on your microphone and just tell us a couple of things you'd like your children to have. Have we got any brave souls out there in cyberland?
David, I think it's a sense of confidence.
Thank you. Great. Confidence. Yep. Anything else?
Resilience.
Yep. That's
How to be
brilliant.
kind, how to be a good friend.
Humility, faith in this world, resilience, confident to start high school. They've got grit, they've got kindness, compassion. And this is quite common when I ask this question. All parents say the same thing. Good work ethic, the ability to form healthy relationships, be empathic, be generous, contribute to our community, have hope. And that's one of the key things at the moment that Karen's raised our awareness of. When we've got a predictable home and school environment and there's a sense of hope, our kids will get through this COVID pandemic. It's what our brain needs, is a sense of hope and some predictability around things. And thanks, Jane, they value learning. So I'll take the pressure off you now. Thanks for making those contributions, because one of the key questions now is that I didn't hear anyone say being able to subtract and divide fractions and being able to name the highest mountains in Asia or Europe. So is what we're teaching what we actually want as an outcome in education, even during lockdowns? So one of the key things about the new age of employment skills are around communication, empathy, problem solving, resilience. So one of the things we worry about, though, is ATAR scores, NAPLAN results, being the top of the class when you're all talking about other qualities and attributes that are really under the pump at the moment with COVID. But these are the sort of the things that restorative practices and Bonio really focus on. Resilience, good citizenship, qualities of stickability, grit, believing in themselves, having a sense of self-worth. And that's what we used to call the hidden curriculum. But Bonio focuses on the social and emotional agenda. And we know from the research, when you focus on those things that you've just mentioned, the academic outcomes will take care of themselves. When kids feel safe, they trust the teacher, they're in a safe environment with low levels of bullying, the academic stuff will take its own course. So I won't ask you to type these in, but you can if you want to. What are your family values? Now, if you're sitting on the couch with your partner, you might look at each other and go, are we on the same page with our family values? So just consider what would be your 4 key family values. And I'm going to raise these values later on in the session. So just think to yourself, these are the values that are important to our family, and hang on to them. So even in lockdowns, the research is indicating quite a few commonalities between schools and families. So one of the things families need to know that if you only focus on one thing during COVID and during other times is relationships, relationships, relationships. Raising your children to respect relationships, to be able to form good and healthy relationships, contribute to a relationship, repair a relationship. And that's one of the joyous things of sending your kids to Bonio. They run restorative practices, so they're learning about relationships while they're learning about maths and science and music and PE and languages. And our parenting conferences is always being challenged by the media and the next news blast on Twitter about the new findings about being a better parent, and you second guess yourself all the time. But being confident about what you're doing at home as a parent is really important. And just being confident that you're sending your kids to a brilliant school like Bonio helps you relax a lot. Now, one of the big stresses for all parents is getting this family work balance right. And often some parents will send their children to the most expensive school because it assuages their guilt around, I can't spend time with my family, so I'm going to make sure I send my kids to the best school so they can get into the best university, to get into the best job, to get into the best graveyard. But there's no research whatsoever that says the amount of money you spend on your child's education will further their lifespan trajectories. No research whatsoever. But it helps us deal with our parenting guilt to make sure our kids are safe. We're accessing the right things for them. And another stress for us is we want our children to have help-seeking behaviours. Now, give me a thumbs up if you want your children to come home and share and seek your wisdom when they've got a problem. Do you want that to happen? They come home and look, it's a natural nurturing thing. But when children move into late childhood and early adolescence, you're the last person they're going to share those problems with. Think about how you treated your parents. Did you sit down with them and say, now, Mum, Dad, I've got some issues with a 13-year-old that I'm hanging around with. They're making some very poor choices and they're getting into risky behaviour. Or I really like a kid in our class. How do you think I should approach that? Or I've made a really big boo-boo at school. Now, that's what children have to do to develop their autonomy and independence. They need to separate from you as the key parent, the key caregiver, the key teacher in their life, and they do it in really disrespectful and disdainful ways. They really hate everything we find attractive. They'll start changing their dress. They won't come out of their bedroom for dinner. They find everything that we find pleasant. It's not cool. It's disgusting. It's terrible. That's the natural trajectory for children. We did this when we were kids, and you might have even had a child come home saying, "You're the worst parent in the world. All the other kids have got much better mothers. I want a different mother." Now, if you've heard that from your kids, take that as a badge of honour. That's a gold medal that you're doing a brilliant job as a parent. That's what children need to do. But they'll come back to you when they need your support and they need to be soothed. Now, the trick with help-seeking behaviours is to know that there is someone at the school that they will connect with. There's someone that they trust and they will talk through these big problems and big emotions with. Now, in the old days of education, we rarely share the problem with any of our teachers because back in the old days, we used to make those problems huge. We'd take the control out of the children's hands and the kid then thought, why did I even tell you? Because now you've made it a huge issue. But with restorative practices, we now know a lot more about how to do this, what really works in schools when kids need those help-seeking behaviours. Now, the things I've just talked about, do you think they're exactly the same for schools? Because as parents and teachers, we're on the same page. We know in schools that the focus on relationships is central to raising healthy children in our communities. But we're driven mad by a range of all these extra jobs. We've got to be counsellors, financial consultants, teach children about consent education. Being confident as a school about what curriculum to present and what social and emotional skills to present is really challenging because there's all those sorts of pressures from society, community, the media, the Department of Education. And as a school, how do we balance teaching about emotions, teaching about relationships, as opposed to teaching content so children get good NAPLAN results and they can go to a great high school and get into a great university? And then in schools, we want children to have help-seeking behaviours. That's really vital. And we've got to understand what happens in prep, grade 1, 2, and then 3, 4, 5, 6. It's very developmental. And that's why we often have peer mediators or peacemakers in year 6 that will help the younger children with tensions and little low-level problems in the playground. So the research really helps us understand how to do this as a school, but we all need to get on the same page. And it's challenging for schools just as much as it is challenging for you. Now, what I want to talk about is this computer in our ears, or as Daniel Goleman calls it, he refers to our brain as this messy puddle of neurotransmitters. It's not this really neat silicon model that we often talk about with the architecture of the brain. And what's happening with COVID over the last 2 years is that we're responding with our brains, but our brains isn't telling us how we're making those decisions. And the brain's not explaining how we're now going to have a big rush of hormones and endorphins in our brain to create these other emotions. All this stuff is happening to your child and to you with your brain at a very, very unconscious level. Now, some of the things we're covering tonight are some of the things that Mandy and I covered with the staff at the school. So just think about this image that I'm putting up on the screen. And what just happened in your brain then is a really unconscious response. Because what happened was you saw the koala, and that went into the important parts of the midbrain, the emotion brain or the mammalian part of the brain, and it didn't send a signal like you're not under any threat. This is really one of our cute little animals in Australia, and your facial expressions changed to being more positive, more pleasant. Some of you actually smiled. But then if I put this image up, the next image, it goes to the cortex, but it goes to our smoke detector first. And that rang a little alarm bell in your brain unconsciously, and you felt that as a threat because as an adult you've learnt now that these animals are very dangerous. So your facial expression changed to one of often anger, shame, dismay, disgust, shock, horror, shame. And then it goes into the cortex. So a millisecond later, it leaves the thalamus, goes into the prefrontal cortex, or the rational part of the brain. And you go, why should I be worried? We're not in North America, and that's just an image of a bear. I've got nothing to be fearful of. But this is happening all the time because I hope you're not having a cup of fried spiders for your dinner. Now that triggers another expression on your face of disgust or dismay, or, oh, yuck, that's terrible. Why would he put that image up? But then the cortex says, don't be ridiculous. You know, you're not going to be eating that tonight. You're having pizza. And we have all these sensory inputs into our brain, and our brain filters out the rapid sensory input that's auditory, visual, kinesthetic, which is about feeling things, and it makes a rapid decision. Now, I'll give you a quick example of this. I had to buy a new battery for my wife's car, a Honda Jazz, and just think of all the Googling you can do to find the best battery for a Honda motor vehicle. It's overwhelming. There are over 1 million hits. But what your brain needs to do is to filter all this input, all of this massive amount of information, and then it will often make an emotional decision because I bought the yellow battery. I didn't buy the best one. So our brains are making emotional decisions all the time. Now I can show you all the research to show that homework is not effective in primary school. It's helpful around 5, 6 to learn those routines and study habits. The best homework for primary age students is shared reading with parents or other older siblings at home. But you'll agree with the research, but then you're making an emotional decision like, my child's not safe at the school because they're not doing homework. And my emotions say that homework's a very important thing for my child to know everything. So this is happening to our brain all the time, and we've now learned about this image of the coronavirus. Previously, 2 years ago, when we were shown this image, we thought, is this a knitting ball that someone's made? But now we go into a little state of distress when we see this image because this is the programming of our unconscious brain. And it's happening all the time. Now, protecting your children about the stresses of COVID is Connectedness, relationships, relationships, relationships. That's all you have to focus on. The fact that you've got a caring, protective relationship for your children will be the best thing possible. We know that it's not the academic program. We've seen from the current research that several hours of tutoring one-on-one with a child that's a little bit behind with literacy and numeracy will bring them up to speed, up to 1 or 2 years of learning. But it's about the protective relationships that help your child to be resilient. So it's about caring, nurturing relationships with their peer group when they're at home with you and at a school like Bonio. That's the most resilient thing for me. Safe relationships. Now, this COVID thing has put incredible strains that are pushing some families to be more vulnerable to the impacts of COVID and the trauma from it. We need to think about how we can shift our school community to be actually resilient. And our brain is doing this at an unconscious level. We've got people that are unconsciously still panicking about COVID. Will I catch the virus? Will my mother and father in Bundaberg be safe? Some people are still in denial because their brain is unconsciously filtering the information, and we've got a confirmation bias, only listening to what is relevant to us. Some people are still scared stiff about this virus. Other people are quite relieved because they got JobSeeker, their business is surviving. They're relieved because schools like Bonio are putting on this parent session tonight. Look, all of us are exhausted from this. We are over it in Victoria, and you'll see that when you drive around. Although we're in lockdown, a lot of people are out there actually enjoying spring, and they don't have masks on, they're not social distancing. And other people have been energised by this because they're finding other ways they can support their community. Some people, and you will probably know some people that are incredibly ignorant about the risks of this virus. Other people have accepted those risks and they're putting some things in place to deal with it. Some of us are just recovering, others of us are still reacting. We're reacting because we can't get to Perth to visit our family. We might not be able to spend Christmas together with our loved ones. Some people are seeing incredible opportunities from this, like Harvey Norman. Other people could see businesses where they could flip their business and make masks or hand sanitizer. Other people are grieving about the business that's gone broke. They're grieving about the lost years of schooling, particularly for VCE children, or the grief and loss from a loved one that died and they couldn't go to visit them or be at the funeral. Or the key fact is we need to work on things that will help us to be more resilient than giving into things that are making us more vulnerable. And hopefully there are things tonight that can help you with your resilient state. So I'm going to steal some work from Bruce Perry. He's an American doctor that runs the Neurosequential Network. He just simply says we're now learning that our disadvantage divide is getting greater, and whether we talk about the western areas of New South Wales, whether we talk about children that can't access the Wi-Fi, don't have laptops at home, have parents that are overwhelmed by trying to keep work demands going or businesses above water. And they're slipping more into a state of vulnerability where this pandemic is providing more unpredictable things, and it's extreme. It's been going on for too long. But working with the schools so we can manage it in a predictable, moderate and controllable way is to help everyone be more resilient. So the thing for you as a parent is how can you make the family rituals, the routines at home more predictable? This is what we're doing tomorrow night. We're all going to cook the meal together. And on the weekend, we're going for a bike ride. And it's moderate, so we're limiting the news outlets we're exposing children to. As a couple, we're agreeing not to be talking negatively about whose business has gone broke. Someone won't wear a mask. Did you hear about the figures in New South Wales today? And control it so your children can have those help-seeking behaviours when they've got the big questions. And it's okay as a parent to say to your children, I don't know. I don't know. You know, Mum and Dad, will we be ever able to travel again and visit Aunties Jack and Aunt Sally? And the answer sometimes is, I don't know. But I'll let you know as soon as we've got an answer. But we're going to be safe here. We're going to see the end of this. We've got to have hope that we will be out of it. It might not be next month or next year, but we will see the light at the end of the tunnel. Because one of the things with this vulnerability is managing the stress. Now, we all need levels of stress in our lives because that's why you leap out of bed excited to go to a dance club or You need a certain level of stress to perform at your optimum level. Imagine a basketball team that goes on the court and it's so ho-hum that they're not at an optimal level of stress with just enough stress hormones flooding their body around, or endorphins, dopamines, and also that key hormone that drives us around adrenaline. We've got to manage the level of stress, or our children can slip into being distressed, or you can feel distressed. Now, you're going to have your good days, you're going to have your bad days, you're going to not be able to get out of bed. That's okay. We've got to normalise this. Not every day can be rosy and sunny. And even principals of primary schools like Mandy will have great days and off days, and I'll have poor days where I just drag my feet around the kitchen. It's okay. It's the connections we have. I can ring someone. I can go for a walk with someone. Someone's checking in on me. And they're the important things to help with being resilient. So we slip into the adversarial bit when it's uncontrolled, it's severe, it's prolonged, and we eat too much. We don't eat the right food. We don't get enough stress. We don't get enough sleep. We don't have enough structure in our day, and we don't get enough exercise, because exercise is the antidote to COVID anxieties and stress. We need to make sure we're putting this in place at home. So make sure you have those rituals at home. Make sure you have a shared family meal. You've all got some jobs and chores. You can set up the home in zones where this is the go nut zone, this is the study zone. Don't expect those old zones before COVID to do the job for you. Use humour as a bit of an antidote for things. Exercise as a family. Show your children how you help, how you reach out when you're not coping, but also how others reach out to you. And you do drop the casserole or the chicken roast meal to the neighbours or someone that gets a bowl of soup. But show and model how you manage your emotions, and make sure your kids are getting 7 to 9 hours sleep. They're not caving into beige and brown food starting with milk. And you are limiting that access to media. They're the critical things. And remember, I'll give Mandy a copy of this PowerPoint so you can go back to these things around connectedness and the simple things to do to safeguard your families around this. Now, for all of your kids, I call it the 4 S's. Your kids will be having different behaviours because they need to be seen. They need to have some power and control over this. So if kids are having big behaviours and they're attention seeking and annoying their sister and brother, it's because they need to have a need met, and they just might need to be soothed at that moment. They might need to have a bit of exercise, go for a sleep, and they need to feel safe. So that's why we need to limit the media, stop the negative talk that we often get into about the disasters at work or with a family. Really filter that from your kids hearing it. Help them with the big emotions. Help them normalise these emotional states they're feeling. They're on the emotional roller coaster as well. And then help them feel safe. Let them know who at school they can talk to and contact who they can play with, and help them develop that sense of, I can go and punch the pillow, jump on the trampoline, go and walk the dog, have some quiet time, listen to some music, go and prepare a little snack for someone in the home. And as long as the home is safe and it's predictable and consistent and positive, that'll match what the school's doing around the routines and programs when we are learning remotely and we go back to face-to-face learning. But remember, the medicine for this stuff is sleep, diet, exercise and connection. Just having a cuddle on the couch is important. Just watching a nice mushy video together. These will help kids feel safe. But they're seeing you modelling those help-seeking behaviours that are really profoundly important to young people in our care. So Mandy's got a copy of some of these websites that'll help you access some of these things, and we'll give you some other supports by way of handouts, etc., that are included in this PowerPoint. So just slow it all down and open up those spaces at home for your children to talk. And you're probably reading this now and you might feel a little bit guilty, like, I've been too crazy busy, I've been too self-absorbed or absorbed with the business. That's okay. Just slow down a bit and listen more when your kids are talking. Create those spaces. Become a better listener to your partner, but also to your children. It's something that wasn't modelled to me and to some of us. My parents weren't very good listeners. I was of the day where children were meant to be seen and not heard. And this is how children cope with tensions and conflict between the adults. And this happens at a really early age, because what age do you think this young child is? And watch the interactions when there's conflict.
There's something inside. Can you see what's inside the box? You can take the lid off. Is there something in there? There's a green cone. You want to put it back inside the box and put the lid back on the box and close it up. Can I see that? Thank you. Let's see what else we have. Look at this. See? Look at this. There.
Hi, Teresa. I'm going to sit here and read a magazine.
Okay. That's Kelly. Kelly's going to sit and read a magazine. Kelly, look at this.
That's aggravating. That's so annoying.
Oh, I thought it was really interesting.
Well, that's just your opinion. It's aggravating.
Yeah. Can I see that? Thank you.
I'm going to go now, Teresa.
Kelly's going bye-bye. Kelly went bye-bye.
So, very simple example of how children will internalise and often think they're the reason that this conflict and tension is present in these interactions. And this is why children come home and will tell you their version of the story. They'll give you edited highlights and have a bit of selective amnesia because they think that's what you need to hear. They don't want to be in trouble with their teacher or their mum or dad at home. And they don't understand because they don't have the executive functioning, a mature brain, to work through this logically. So that's why you need to come to the school and work with the classroom teacher to work as a team to sort through these problems. And I know you believe your child has never told you a lie in your life and they're always accurate with the truth. That's not the reality. You can see how a young child here internalises the tensions and conflict and wants things to be better, but they just can't do it. They're a child. And we're the adults that need to normalise these experiences and say to our children, look, the COVID stuff's not your fault. The reason your father and I are having some issues with each other, it's not your fault. And you need to plan not to be exposing kids to those tensions and often tough conversations you have with each other. And to let children know this is not their fault, but there is hope. And there is some structure to their time at home so that it becomes predictable and consistent, because that's what their brain needs to work through this. Now, this is some of the information we shared with staff at the school. This is a very quick lesson in the brain. Now, essentially, children's brains are made up of three things, and that's why we call it the triune brain. And the childhood brain develops from the bottom up and then outwards. And a brain's not mature until age 25 or 27. So the bottom bit of the brain here is about regulating the body, breathing, making sure we're not someone's lunch, which comes from the hunter and gatherer days. And it's almost the automatic part of the brain that regulates just keeping us alive. Now, we call that the reptilian brain or the T-Rex brain, and with kids we call it the downstairs brain. Now, the mammalian brain that makes us unique as sentient creatures is about feelings and emotions and memories. And that's where we relate to others, and that's where we feel safe in the company of others, and we can then move from the bottom brain, the survival brain, up to our mammalian brain. And when we feel safe, we can actually engage the grey matter up here, the rational part of our brain, and make a better choice and think about our thinking and cogitate. And that's the part that makes us really unique as mammals. So it's developmental. Many children cannot access the prefrontal cortex and do the executive function. And many of us can't do it because we're making emotional decisions about batteries all the time. And often when we've made a poor purchase, I purchased the yellow battery and my partner said, I thought you were going to buy the black one. I thought the research showed that was the best one. I'll engage my prefrontal cortex to then rationalise my decision. Oh, well, the reason was because of this, this and this. Rather than, well, I like yellow as a colour and I thought it'd look nice when I lifted up the bonnet. So we're very fallible creatures. But with our children, we have to understand that they've got this somatic world or this internal world that's sending their brain messages. Am I hot? Am I cold? Am I safe? Am I sitting on an uncomfortable chair? Am I tired? Am I grumpy? Have I got really excited because I'm doing something at school? And the outside world is flooding the brain with sensory information. And often you'll see a child have a meltdown in the supermarket because their brain's overwhelmed by too much sensory input. And that's what supermarkets do. That's why they put the lollies and the things within reach of children, because they know it triggers and the parent just wants to reduce the burden and they'll buy it. They'll keep their child happy by doing that. Now, the brain will feel safe, the mammalian brain, when it's a predictable, consistent, safe world. And at the moment, COVID has wiped that out. Kids don't feel safe. And often they'll go down to the reptilian brain when they go into survival mode, and you'll see a child shut down. They'll slump to the floor, sulking, shouting, yelling. They'll be in their bedroom with a little temper tantrum, but it's all about their brain, and their brain can't regulate. So we need to help them by doing some self-soothing. We'll nurture them, we'll pat them, we'll give them a little drink, we'll take them for a walk, we'll just say nice things like, no, it's okay, just breathe, I'll sort it out in a minute. And then we can get them to the executive part. We can do some planning and reflecting. Was that a good choice to kick your sister? Is that okay in our family, that sort of behaviour? What's a better decision next time when she won't share things with you? And we get the ability to plan and be practiced at making better decisions next time. Now, just to give your brain a little break from my monotone voice, here's a little example of how young brains can't access the prefrontal cortex and work abstractly through some things like Dad playing a trick with the syrup. Oh, we can't hear Dad. I've got the volume. Just a minute. I'll go back here.
Right. All right, here we go. Our only way it's going to work is for all our eyes are closed. Abra. Cadabra.
How did you do that? How did you come on through? How did you do this?
Oh, it's just a beautiful child in that video clip. So let's move on to another topic, dealing with some of the conflict at home. Let's give you a little hypothetical problem. It's Friday night at home. Your child has come home from school in the ideal world, or they've just finished their remote learning. And it's 3 o'clock and they come into the lounge room and you say, how was school today? How was your remote learning? Good. What did you learn? Nothing. Did you have a little test or a quiz? No. Did you talk to anyone else in your class? No. Did anyone talk to you? No. What are you going to do this weekend? Fortnight. So if you're getting those answers from your children, you need to change the questions, and that'll change their answers. So they've had a great weekend, you've had a pretty good weekend, but Monday evening the teacher rings and says, look, I'm sorry, it's Mr. Smith from the school. We had a big project that needed to be submitted online on Friday, and David didn't submit it. Look, I had a chat to him in a breakout room and said, I'll give you till Monday to get that work submitted. No big deal, just give you to Monday. Now, your child didn't submit the work on Monday when we finished up, so would it be possible for you to have a conversation with your child at home? And that's the scenario. Now, what do you do next when you've hung up the phone or hung up the Zoom call with your child's teacher? You don't feel delighted when you receive a phone call like this. So what sort of conversation will you have with your son and daughter? What would be the right sort of questions to ask? and think about what outcomes do you want for your son or daughter, for the classroom teacher, for the other children that got the project done. And I'd love to be in the same room with all of you, because we would get you into pairs and you talk to other parents about, well, I'd be getting the wooden spoon, and we would see body language like this, or comments like, I'd need to cool down, or no, I believe my child. So what we do is we unpack this incident to align the conversations we have at home with restorative practices at the school. So the key question is going back to your family values, because now can you recall your family's values? And when you responded to this incident, do you think, what are our family values? Because that will decide what strategy we use to undo this incident. Now, your family values, I hope, are aligned to restorative practice values, and they're the 8 restorative practice values there. And I hope that these are aligned to Bonio Primary School values. Now, give me the thumbs up if you can recall Bonio Primary School's values. Or give me the thumbs down if you haven't got a clue. Oh, I don't see all the thumbs up. Are you telling me you're sending your children to an organisation and you don't know what their values are? Because what if Bonio's values were, I think Vanessa's popping something up in the chat window. Because what if Bonio's values were an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, zero tolerance, we use discipline to punish someone. Oh, thank you, respect, empathy, brilliant work. Now, Mandy, I don't know people's names here, so I'm hoping their parents are not teachers that are online.
No, they are parents. Well done, parents.
Good job, folks.
We've got an acronym. It's RED values.
Well, it's easy to remember, and it's certainly working, because the only way we can get on the same page is to talk about how we're going to respond to this incident by reflecting on our values. And that's why Bonio doesn't use any punitive practices. There's no research whatsoever that supports taking a punitive approach. So if we look through these windows and how we respond to that simple incident, this Johari window really brings to life restorative practices, because we want to be firm and fair as parents, because the teachers at the school are trying to be firm and fair as well. Now, were you the submarine parent that you did nothing, you ignored it? So when the teacher rang, you said, oh, a lot of problems with Telstra connections in the neighbourhood. Sorry, you're dropping out, and the parent drops the phone. Now, it looks like we haven't got any submarine parents tonight that go, whoop, they go underwater when the school tries to contact them. Have we got any Black Hawk parents with us? Give me a thumbs up if you're a Black Hawk. These are the Black Hawk parents hovering over their child with their rockets aimed at anyone who's attacking their child. No, don't think you're a Black Hawk parent. I'll give you a little bit of an idea here. Do you do any of this as a parent? Now, by the way, these are all true stories. I've collected these from parents. You know, one who said, oh, our children are very busy. I send them a text when dinner's ready. They're busy in their bedroom. You know, I know the text message my mum would send me, you know, see you for breakfast. If you go hungry tonight, you will respect the ceremonies we have at home. Now, the Black Hawk parents go and say to their child, look, your teacher just rang and they talked about a project. Oh, I know they'd ring. Look, I've got too much work at school. This remote learning, we've all got too much work. Oh, did you think about talking to your teacher that you couldn't get the project? No one in our class talks to our teacher. If you try and discuss that with our teacher, they just get mad and they yell at you. Oh, how dare you? How dare they yell at my child? I'm going up to that school to have a piece of this. I'm going to Zoom that teacher, and how dare they upset my little prince or princess? Now, that's why you've got to come to the school and work as a bit of a team. But Mandy, it looks like we don't have any Black Hawk parents with us tonight. You've recruited really well. Good job. Now, are there any brick wall parents? They do things to their child. You know, they get to the phone and say, I just talked to your teacher. Get to your bedroom now. How dare you bring that sort of shame on our family? Get all the electrical devices out. We're putting those on Gumtree. I'll tell you when to breathe in and breathe out. Boy, are you in trouble. Where they just do things to their children rather than being the backbone parent that works with their child. Now, the backbone parent might say, I just got off the phone from your teacher and I'm really upset about what's happened. I need you to go to your bedroom, have a bit of time away and think about what you've done, the lies on Friday night, the fact that you weren't honest with your teacher. Think about how it's affected us, how it's affected your teacher, the other children that got the work done. And when we're calm and ready to talk about this, we'll get together and we'll solve this problem and we'll give you as much support as you need. Now that's the parent who's the restorative relational parent, and that's exactly what we're doing at Bonio. We're working with children to solve problems, to give them the responsibility to understand how and why people have been affected by their behaviour. So what a joy. We've got mostly backbone parent with us tonight, and we've moved well away from the blame and shame to talking about harm and repair. Who's been harmed? Who's been affected by you lying to us Friday night, not submitting the project? And we have an entirely different conversation. And we've moved well away from talking at young people. We don't get the big finger out anymore and go, you should, you have to, you won't, you don't. Because how does that go with your partner at home when you get the finger out and you're talking those absolutes? You never, you don't, you should. When did your partner stop listening to you? And when you're judging your child, they put the shutters up a long time ago. They're not listening to you anymore. They've shut down and thought of their own plight. Oh, I'm in trouble. Just punish me. Do something abstract and nonsensical because I just want to feel better about myself. And that's where restorative practices is really hard, because we don't ask these questions. You know, why didn't you do the project is the most unproductive question, because the why question apportions blame. And if anyone asks you, why haven't you done this at work, or the police ask, why were you speeding? That's a high functioning question. That demands a very mature brain to explain the background to the why question. If you want to transform the conversations you have at home, just ask what instead of why. Just ask what. What happened? What's going on with the project? What's up with the teacher ringing? What's up with lying to us Friday night? How did that happen? What did you want to have happen? You get a much different conversation. And please don't add into this, wait until your father gets home. You've got to work together as a couple. You can't be playing each other off. So it is okay to feel really upset at red zone, but calm yourself down and then talk with your child about the problem. And all we want you to do is get a copy of those questions, and I'm sure Mandy can send you a quick copy, print them out and put them on the refrigerator. And because often a lot of those big conversations are happening around the refrigerator. And just say to your child, tell us what happened about the project. What were you thinking Friday night when you lied to us? Who's been affected and in what ways? How's this affected your teacher? Oh, it hasn't. My teacher's a robot. No, they're not. They're a real life human being. How do you think your teacher felt when they had to ring me, at 6 o'clock on Monday night? That's not part of their job. How do you think this has affected me? How does it affected you? And the important thing is, what do you need to say and do to fix things? And when you come up with a bit of a plan, I'll help you with the plan. I'll go to school with you, I'll set up a Zoom session, and then let's make a plan next time so you don't miss a project. And it could be some strong medicine where you say, for the next 2 weeks, we're checking your online diary, we're checking your student diary, we're checking in with your teacher to make sure you're getting these jobs done. Oh, don't do that, that's not cool, doesn't matter, that's what we're doing, and we'll review it in 2 weeks. It's not for forever and ever and ever. So let's talk to our kids so they give us more conversation. And please move away from these danger phrases. You probably heard these when you were a child. If your friends put their head in the fire, would you do the same? They're not productive. Please don't use these anymore. They won't go anywhere for you. Please try and use some of these. Use positive questions. So when you're having that ceremony of the family meal, you're doing little games and you lead the way, like 2 truths and 1 dream, or talk about 2 positives that were from your day working remotely with your class. And you lead the way by modelling it. I'll tell you 2 positives about my day at work. I helped someone unjam the photocopier, and I helped someone with a hack on their emails. Or I helped the boss recruit a new worker at work. Or I took some nice bread rolls along for morning tea and people loved them. Play games like, would you rather be a dolphin or an eagle? Would you rather be a snake or a fish? and then your children come up with a would you rather. So change the conversation to change the answers, and do some jobs. Boys don't feel comfortable sitting down doing the eye-to-eye contact with it. Girls are much more comfortable with that. With boys, do a job. Let's go and tidy up your study desk because you've got stuff all over the desk, and tell me about 2 positives from your day. Let's go and peel the vegetables for dinner tonight. And you're side on side with boys. They're much more comfortable doing that. Go for a dog walk or a cat walk or whatever animal you've got. And as you're walking along, say, now let's talk about the day. What was awesome? What was one thing you'd do differently? And the last thing I'm going to say is get rid of the devices. Now, Mandy will be selling these at the front office when the school reopens. This is a gratuitous ad by Dolmio, but this is the key message. When families disconnect, they connect. Check this one out.
Okay guys, time for dinner. Come help set the table. Something. No, my phone isn't working either.
So they'll be available at the front office for $29.99. But the trick with this is you've got to model it. You've got to put your phone away. You've got to help start the conversation. And boy, it pays off dividends, but behaviour will get worse before it gets better. So put up with a week or 2 of tantrums. But I can tell you it will be fabulous when it does. So look, folks, I'm finished. So it's now Q&A time. And I'll stop sharing so the gallery screen comes up. I've got a couple of minutes. Are there any questions or queries before I hand you back to Mandy?
Just jump in and take your mic off. Go for it. Be brave if you have a question or you've got something you would like or you're interested in clarifying.
This is exactly what teachers experience when they've got remote learning. It's like the sound of crickets when they ask a class a question. So you're all gorgeous, you're all beautiful. Give me a thumbs up if you got something out of it.
Oh, here's one. Kelly said, how do
thank
we combat lockdown and homeschooling fatigue? Good question.
We all know that when we're on Zoom sessions as adults, we're exhausted at the end of it. So let's just take it easy on our kids. If you've got a child with low frustration levels, etc., and they can't hang in there for the whole thing, it's okay. You know, just make sure you're maintaining the relationships rather than the academic outcomes. Communicate with the teacher about that. All children in the class have got different levels of frustration and coping skills, etc. It's not going to be perfect. Just be a good parent. I've got a colleague that was a primary school teacher and an absolute professional, and she's just said, I'm not going to buy into the arguments and discussions and the hissy fits and the issues. When the kids had enough of the remote learning with their class, I've realised that's it. They're not going to learn anything when they're frustrated and battling you and the teacher. And whether that's, abrogating my responsibility to say you must do everything Bonio teaches the setting, but take it easy. The key thing out of this thing is relationships, relationships, relationships. Your child will have a great day remotely. They'll have a terrible day remotely. It's okay. Just go with the flow. You can't.
And we had another great question there. How do you deal with distraction?
Oh, well, look, what's your concentration span? When did you start fiddling online tonight with me talking at you? And we're finding now that children after lockdown, and Victoria's been in a lot, their concentration spans are getting less and less and less. We're finding now that children on the first couple of returns could only do one task, where previously in their primary school classroom they could do 3 or 4 tasks. So their ability to do more tasks than one and to stay on task for longer is becoming reduced. So accept that that's an unpleasant reality. But we know now when they get back into the routine, back into the classroom, those skills return really fast. This short-term thing you're seeing is not going to be forever. The research is upholding these comments I'm making to you. Our NAPLAN results were excellent recently. We thought they were going to be an absolute disaster. So when they do get distracted, do something physical with them. Give them a complete brain break. Go and run around the backyard. Go and get something prepared for dinner. Go and have a snack. Come back and see if they can get back on task. And if their brain's exhausted for the day, that's okay. Look, if they want to sit down and watch a movie or do a jigsaw puzzle, it's okay. Go for good. Don't go for gold. It's not going to damage your child's pathways or future. The research shows that. The news about COVID, this is Gemma's question. Yeah, give them some idea into what's happening. Choose that we're only going to watch the SBS news for 10 minutes, or we're going to talk at the dinner table about COVID for 5 minutes. We're just going to have a news blast, and Dad does the news reader. We cut out a cardboard box, and he's got his special newsreader suit, and you give your kids news for the day. The next day, Mum does it as a roving reporter. Make it fun, but just give them information they can handle. If they've got big questions, just go with the questions. They'll come at different times. You'll be peeling the spuds, and next minute out of the blue comes the biggest question you've ever heard. That's okay. It's okay to say, I don't know, but I'll find out for you. Or, oh, it's nice you're really worried about that, but that's not going to happen. Look, as your mum, I'm telling you, that's not going to happen. But kids are getting bombarded with their stuff, and you get bombarded as well. So you know your children, and you can measure it. Trust yourself. Trust your gut instinct around this. You don't need me to tell you how many minutes of news blasts your children should be exposed to. You're their parent. You're their first teacher. You're their most important connection. You'll know when your kid's getting too much, and at the moment, unregulated is not good. Thanks, Jane. If you've got to run, you've got to go. So, look, it's 8:32. I'm going to hand you back to Marty.
Yeah.
Man, and a heartfelt thank you.
Thank you so much, David. It was really good. It was just, hopefully affirming, and you got a few little ideas and a few reminders there tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. One of the biggest things we as a staff felt today is we need to give children something to look forward to over the next 2 weeks. So next week, we've got a few surprises for them, but a big one that we want the families to join in. We're going to have a 5:30 Cahoots trivia Thursday night for the whole family before dinner time, and big prizes for first, second, third, and the staff are going to run that for all of our families on Thursday for the children to look forward to. I'm announcing that tomorrow in the buzz. And the other thing for the following week, we're going to have footy day on Thursday. So it's that giving the children something to look forward to throughout these, really challenging time of not being able to come back together, but being able to join together in some fun. So thank you so much tonight for coming. And I certainly appreciate, David, just your, ideas and your clarity around the things you shared. And David always shares PowerPoints and really great links, which I'll put in the buzz tomorrow, so families will have that to look back to. So thanks so much, David, for tonight. It was really wonderful. Thanks, everyone, for coming, because I know there's a lot of Zoom fatigue. So I really appreciate you taking the time, and I hope that was helpful for our families. Have a good night. Go and enjoy a bit of a break. Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Good to see you. Thanks heaps, Dave. It was great.
Well, thanks for the invitation, Mandy.
It was really good.
Your
It's
parents
great.
really
And
appreciate it.
I'll share all your bits and pieces with the families.
All right. Hey,
Have a
you go
good
and
night.
go and put
Take
your
care.
feet up.
Yeah, I will.
We'll talk
See
again.
you.
Bye now.
Take care.